younger girls I was working with at the time, but it kind of felt like they were trying to choose a date. Like, well, this couple looks cute, and this, and they did need some counseling and some help to say, listen, there are bigger and more important issues we want to look at, like character, and is mom at home, and then whether or not they look cute, like they're. So I think with good counseling and our adoption agencies, I'm really proud of most of them, or at least the ones I get to have contact with. They're so good about supporting her through that, and helping her, and making sure she's 100% comfortable, and is supported not only during the pregnancy and at the birth, and then I had a beautiful transfer. Her mom, and then the grandma, the bio grandma, sewed this beautiful quilt to go with baby that said Jeremiah, and I'm going to get it wrong, it's not 29:11, it's before that. It says, I have loved you with an everlasting love. And they were able to give baby and the quilt, and both my birth mom journaled through the whole time, and adoptive mom journaled, and then they shared each other's journal. And what's so funny? I was doing a banquet for a pregnancy center, doing a fundraising banquet, speaking, and this girl came up to me, and tall, and she was just beautiful. And she goes, do you remember? And then she said the birth mother's name. Do you remember, Katie? And I'm like, yeah. And she goes, I'm that baby. And I couldn't believe how much she looked like her mother. I mean, it had been years, 20 years almost. And here she was, a student at Bible college. She was supporting the pregnancy center. There was that baby that I had stood, 20 some years ago with her birth mom as she made that handoff. And it was just beautiful. So there's so much support now for birth mothers. We need more. We need to make it. We need to hear their voice. We need organizations like Brave Love, bravelove.org, and talkadoption.org. We need these organizations that support those birth moms and give them a voice and allow them to share their stories in a beautiful way. I think, Molly, I really think that in the last probably 5 years, maybe even decade, that there's been more positive things shown on open adoption in our media, even that places that you wouldn't think, like the movie, the TV show, This Is Us.
Yes.
Showed. Yes. And you know what? They showed the beauty of open adoption, but they also showed the damage of abortion. I was absolutely shocked that they did that so well. And that's just NBC TV show that was very popular and a lot of people saw, right?
Yeah.
And I think there was
seeing more of that kind of stuff even on social media, siblings reuniting with each other, one that had been adopted, whatever. And so I'm seeing more of that, which is really encouraging and nice to see. So I just want to reiterate to our listeners and our audience that really consider adoption and get information, because you might run into someone who's pregnant and won't consider that. But I think the more you learn about the different adoption methods, the more that you can have an opportunity to save a life. God may bring someone in your life. And if you've had an adoption or been adopted, we'd like to hear from you. We would like to connect with you. We want to hear your story. We want to help you, share that story to encourage other mothers and to do the same thing. Well, I kind of want to transition, because I know we're going to be running out of time here in a minute. So, you were conceived in rape, and God really got you involved in pro-life work, because every life is important and valuable. And then you got involved with this adoption coalition, and with teaching young people, hey, let's avoid pregnancy and sexual diseases and heartache and emotional problems by having sex before marriage. Let's value our bodies and stay pure until we get married. But you're also involved in another life-saving program that's nationwide. And it's another option for mothers, because there's going to be some mothers who get pregnant and they don't want anyone to know they're pregnant. They don't want to disclose it to anyone for any reason, many reasons, I'm sure. And what do these mothers have available to them besides, doing something destructive to their baby and themselves?
Right. The whole reason I got involved with the Safe Haven and Safe Haven baby boxes is because I got called to Indiana about 13 or 14 years ago because a senator had made a statement. Senator Murdoch was running for the Senate in Indiana and made a statement that children that were conceived in rape were planned by God. And I understood what he meant. I understood he was giving value to us. But the other side, as you know, Molly, didn't like that. So they went on a tear. Oh, Senator Murdoch says God plans rape and wants women to be raped, and said all kinds of horrible things. And so a friend of mine, Rebecca Kiesling, who's an attorney who was also conceived in rape, called me up and she said, Pam, we need to do a press conference. We need to get our faces out there and talk about, rape conception. So I flew into Indiana for this press conference, and this young girl, just little powerhouse, little short girl, comes up to me, and her name was Monica Kelsey. And she told her story. She was there to tell her story. She was from Indiana, and she was conceived in rape and abandoned as an infant in 1974. And she was a firefighter paramedic, but she just started to have that desire to tell her own story about being conceived in rape. And so she said, I want to be a speaker. And my typical reaction is usually don't quit your day job when people come up and tell me that. But for some reason, she was persistent, and I just had some great feelings about her. And I said, listen, I'm going to South Africa on a 2-week tour to speak about pro-life and about sex and sexual integrity. I'm willing to take you with so you can tell your story and give you some time on stage and work with you. So she flew to South Africa with me. We had an amazing 2 weeks of speaking to students and in churches all over South Africa. Very last church we went into was in Cape Town. And we were walking into the church, and just before you walked into the actual front doors, like vestibule, whatever you call it, on the outside, there was what looked like a bank deposit box. And I'm looking at this, it said baby safe, and both Monica and I are like, what is that? And the pastor said that they had so many babies abandoned right around their church. In fact, the last one before he put the box in was some boys at their church were playing soccer in a field, and they saw a garbage bag moving, and they went over and opened it, and there was a newborn infant boy, placenta still attached in that garbage bag. Praise God, he lived, partly because the placenta was still attached, I'm sure. And a family from their church adopted him, and they named him Moses, which I thought was the cutest thing. So Moses. And so the pastor said that was like the last resort. He said, I'm going to do something about this. And he built this device that would allow a mother in crisis to open that door. The alarms would sound, 911. And in their instance, they also called the church, somebody at the church. I don't know if it was a pastor or his wife. I don't know. And then the baby was placed in there. And then when the mother shuts the door, it locks, and the baby can only be retrieved them from the inside, and that baby's life could be spared, right? So Monica is a firefighter, mind you, on the time. She's a medic working out of a fire station, and she says on the Delta napkin flying back from South Africa to Indiana, she wrote the plans for the Safe Haven baby box. And you have to know, when she got there and she told her other firefighters, we're going to build a box, they thought she'd lost her ever-loving mind. But we knew we had to change the law. That was the first thing. So we went to, at that time was Governor Pence in the state of Indiana, and we changed the statute so that this device is a legal form of surrender. Now, our box is much more sophisticated than what we saw in South Africa, but it's built into the fire station or a hospital. It is completely temperature controlled. It is all electronic. The box itself calls 911. So the minute a mother were to open that door, 911 is called. We have a medical bassinet in there that she's to place baby in. We have an orange bag that almost falls out at her. We ask her to take that because that has information for her about medical. Most of our moms did not birth their babies in hospitals, and we want them to know what to look for to get their own medical care. It gives her all her legal rights. If she would choose to come back and claim that child, what's going to happen. And then it also gives her some human trafficking and some local resources as well. So we want her to take that with her. And then she places the baby in the bassinet. When she shuts the door, again, it locks. And the box itself has already called 911, and firefighters or hospital staff have to be at that box within 5 minutes, so that no baby is ever in that. Most of them are not in it longer than 2 minutes, but the protocol is 5. So it's an amazing option, and it's not for everyone. And we've always said we would much rather the mother make an adoption plan. We would much rather her even face-to-face surrender in some cases. But you've got women who that having to look at someone and hand in this crisis and hand them their baby is way too scary for them. And this allows complete anonymity, and they can know that their baby is safe and cared for. So we've
as
worked
long as
hard
the baby, as long as the baby hasn't been harmed, and
correct.
She doesn't have anything to worry about at all. And like you said, you can remain anonymous. No one will know
Completely.
you, but you have all the resources you need because it'll be available for you. And your baby will be placed in foster care or with a state and then placed for adoption, correct?
Yeah, well, what we're working on right now, in most cases, what happens is the baby will go into either foster to adopt, or I live in the state of Florida. In the state of Florida, baby goes directly to the adoptive family. So DCS is not involved. But we want the forever family to have that baby in their arms as quickly as possible. So and here's the reality. We have over 1.5 million couples right now waiting to adopt an infant. We have no infants available. Of women in unintended pregnancies who carry their children to term, I'm not talking about abortion, who carry their children to term, 99% will parent. 1%, sometimes less, would ever make an adoption decision. So the reality is we have so much infertility. We have so many couples who can't have children, and we have 0 babies available. Infant adoption in the U.S. today takes about 8 to 10 years and costs between $50,000 and $70,000. And so, if women would make the loving choice, whether it's making the adoption plan or a safe surrender, if that's all they can bring themselves to do, then we know that baby's going to have a family. So behind me, wait, I got to figure out which way I'm going. It's backwards. You're going to see my Monica, myself, and you'll see the little girl there in between us. She was surrendered. I actually counseled her mom. I answered the hotline for the Safe Haven. So I got to counsel her mom. She was placed in that box. She was with her adoptive family within 30 days. And this was a reunion we had back at the fire station. She got to come back and ride the fire truck, and the firefighters got to hug on her and love on her. And let me just say this, because I think some people say, hey, how could these moms throw their children away, or what, these moms who surrender, Safe Haven surrender, love their child, and they want, everything in them wants to do the best thing for their child. Many of them don't believe that them parenting would be safe. Many of them are, they're afraid, or we've got domestic violence going on, and we want to make sure we're available to help them through all of those things. I've spent months counseling a lot of our surrendering moms. But the reality is, in this instant right here, the most important thing is that baby is safe. And these mothers that do this love their child enough to take that pain and keep their child safe.
Amen. And Safe Haven laws are in every state. I don't know if we have Safe Haven baby boxes in every state, but you're working on it. And then I want you to give my producer and our audience a phone number, the Safe Haven phone number to call, and then maybe a couple last words for that you want to share with our listeners.
Yeah, I'm going to give you the website. That's the best thing, because then you can see what states, right? So it's shbb.org. You can go there and learn everything about it. There's also a map that will give you every state's law. So all 50 states have a Safe Haven law, but they're all different. It's very complicated. Some are 30 days old. Some are the baby has to be under 60 days old. And then only 19 states have passed laws to allow for the boxes. And so you'll see the states that currently have boxes. And I'm right now working with 12 states trying to amend their law in order to make Safe Haven baby boxes available. So you can get all that information at shbb.org. You will see the hotline. There is a parents in crisis. So if it's somebody that is in crisis and needs help, they'll know how to get that. But for your listeners who just want to know more and maybe bring a box to their community, Molly, Texas has the highest abandonment rate of any state, and that has been consistent for the last 20 years.
Wow.
In fact, we had 7 babies abandoned in Houston alone this last summer. And so we are legal in Texas, and we're doing our best to get those boxes in the state of Texas.
Yeah. Mary, is there anything you would like to say?
I've got a couple things. One is we're bringing Safe Haven Baby Boxes is coming to my community in Jefferson City, Missouri, which I'm excited about. But Pam, it's striking to me that you teach on sexual integrity. You were conceived in rape. You've taken education to all kinds of young people about the boundaries where sex is safe. And then you're working on adoption and in the Safe Haven. It's like you have all these pieces of a big puzzle that are just beautiful. So I just want to acknowledge you and thank you for your voice in this. I'm grateful to your 15-year-old mother who chose to have you. And I'm grateful for you for saying yes for all these ways in which you stand for life. So thank you.
Amen. And I
Mary, I appreciate that.
Yeah. And I just want you to address the mothers out there, especially in Texas and across the country, who are pregnant. They don't know what to do with this child. They're desperate. They haven't aborted. And encourage them, the best you can, Pam.
Yeah, you know what? Get help. If you haven't delivered yet, you're along, you've got a couple of months. My best advice to you is find that pregnancy care center. Go to optionline.org. Find a pregnancy center near you. You just have to put your zip code in and you'll find them. Talk to someone, talk through your options, right? If you're closer to giving birth or you've just given birth and this is a little more of a crisis, I don't care where you are, whether there's a baby box near you or not, you have the right to walk into a fire station or hospital and legally surrender that baby. No names, no shame, and no blame. Just walk in and say, I'm surrendering under the Safe Haven law, and hand that baby and walk away. If you want information for your baby to know, then you can write a note and you can give any information you want your baby to have, put it in that note, and it will go with the firefighter to the hospital, and you'll know your baby is safe. So we want you to get help. So do reach out to optionline.org. Do reach out to a counselor. You can reach out to our hotline at shbb.org as well, and just talk to somebody and get the help that you need. We want to give you hope. We want to support you. We want to love you. And we want to make sure there's joy in the morning, Molly. This crisis seems dark right now, but if we can get through it, there's going to be healing and hope, and God can redeem your story too.
Amen. Thank you so much, Pam, for coming on our podcast today and sharing this wealth of information that we really haven't talked about on our podcast. And we certainly want to invite you back. And if you want to get in contact with Pam, her website is down there below. I think it's SBHH. Is that correct?
No, shbb.org.
shbb.org. Thanks for correcting me on that. And listen, hey, to our audience, if your heart's been touched by today's episode, then please share this link on your social media sites and with your contacts. And, are you ready to go on your own healing journey? Have you had a pregnancy through adoption or conceived or in rape or whatever? There's hope and healing for you if you have not taken that step yet. And contact Pam's website and take that first step to your redemption story, right, Mary?
That's right.
We just don't want anyone to feel like you have no choices, because you do. If you're pregnant, you have plenty of choices. You have plenty of time to make a decision, and an educated decision, but you want all the support that you need out there, and it's available for you out there. And like Pam said, a pregnancy resource center is the best way to go to get that kind of support and help. So if you like learning what you've learned today, just leave us a comment and share our link. So thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. God bless you. Bye-bye. Well, welcome to More to the Story, what the abortion industry doesn't tell you. I'm your host, Molly White, and this is Mary Browning, my co-host. And we are happy that you joined us today for another informative and moving episode that will educate, equip, and motivate you, bring hope to the hurting, and save lives of mothers and their babies. So I invite you to tag your friends and invite them to listen in as we discuss conceived in rape, the safe haven baby boxes, and sexual integrity. But before we get started, I'd like to thank our show sponsor, Hotze Health and Wellness Center. And if you want more information about getting healthy and staying healthy, then check out his website below the screen there. Mary, would you like to come in and say hello?
Hello, Molly. I'm really glad to be here. I'm excited about our guest today, and I think we're going to learn a lot by talking with our guest.
Amen. Well, thank you, Mary. So today we're going to be talking about, with our special guest, being conceived in rape. And she's also an expert in the safe haven baby boxes that are all across the country that women need to know about. And she's also a sexual integrity speaker. And so I'm really looking forward to having Pam Stenzel on in just a few minutes. We'll introduce her to talk about these great topics. And please like and share and feel free to comment as well. So welcome, Pam. We want you to come in and just give our audience a little bit of a bio, a little bit of introduction about yourself.
Sure. It is so great to be with you. And Molly, we go back a long way, back to the UN in the early 2000s, I'm going to say. And so it's good to be with you. And Mary and I have gotten to know each other a little bit over the past couple of years with some other projects we're doing on adoption. So what a thrill to get a chance to speak to you. I have been speaking and traveling to students and speaking to students about sex for a lot of years. If anybody, most people will remember my name. They just call me the sex lady, but it started because I was working in pregnancy care centers in Minnesota. And I was, seeing these girls come into our pregnancy center and worried about being pregnant and had zero idea of the real consequences of the choices they were making about sex. And I learned something early on that when you complain to God about who's not doing something, like why isn't something doing something about these kids, and why isn't somebody teaching them right? Why that the Holy Spirit just puts his finger on your heart and says, well, then you do it and stop whining about who's not doing it, right? So I started traveling and speaking about sex, and it just turned into craziness. My first video came out in 1995. It was VHS. That's how old I am. And it ended up being translated in 11 languages and used in 41 countries around the world. So I spent a lot of years doing that. And all of a sudden, one day I was speaking in Indiana. And actually, because you mentioned my story at the beginning, I got involved in pro-life work really because almost 60 years ago now, a young 15-year-old girl became pregnant, had a lot of difficult choices to make. More than some teen girls, she was raped, but she chose to give her child life and then to place that child with an adoptive family. And that child was me. My biological father is a rapist. Don't really know my ethnicity, but I believe that my life is worth just as much as all of yours, even though my biological father was a rapist. I didn't deserve the death penalty for the crime of my biological father. And listen, my birth mother is my hero. And I have said it from the beginning. She chose to give me life. And then she chose to give me one of the most amazing gifts I was ever given. And that's my family. I'm the oldest of 8 kids, 7 of us adopted, every color of the rainbow in my family. And what a godly mom and dad I was given, an amazing home. And all of that was a gift from a very scared 15-year-old girl. And every day when people talk about abortion and say, well, I'm against abortion or I wouldn't have an abortion. But if it were rape, my comment is that, first of all, abortion in the case of rape kills an innocent child. I mean, let's just all admit that. That's a baby that you've just killed who was innocent. It hurts the mother. And I hear pro-life people saying, well, if it was rape, and I'm like, wait a minute, abortion damages women. So you've you've killed the child, you've damaged the mother who's the victim here as well. The only person you helped, and you did help someone, the only person you helped was the rapist.
Yeah.
You helped the trafficker, you helped the offender.
Yeah.
And it's like, to me, this is complete misplaced compassion. What my birth mother needed in that moment of trauma was not to have me violently ripped from her womb, to repay violence with more violence. She needed someone to love her. She needed someone to come alongside her and offer her hope and help. And so that's really why I got involved in the pregnancy center world and started offering that hope and help to women in that crisis. And
in your story, Pam, I'm sorry to interrupt, but your story is so important because there's always the rape and incest factor. Oh, but what about? And really, like you were saying, the abortion does not heal the trauma of rape. I had a girlfriend that put it in this way. She goes, the trauma of abortion never heals the trauma of rape. It just packs trauma on top of trauma. And I've heard testimonies like yours, and even from the mothers who chose abortion because of rape and incest, and how they felt like they were a victim of a violent crime, and then they feel like they're a perpetrator of a violent crime. And
100%.
So we really have to educate our listeners that, like you said, women who conceive out of rape and incest need love and support and encouragement to love and nurture their children, whether they raise their children or place them for adoption. And it's really a society who thinks, oh, how could you have a rapist kid? Well, it's her baby too.
100%. And I'm a child of God. I am not the rapist child. I am a child of God. And I think we need to put the blame for the rape, and we're not even giving the death penalty to the rapist. We're actually giving it to the child. And you're exactly right about the trauma. Do you know how many women I've talked to who had abortions after rape? And you know what? They felt that because that's always the excuse. And I'm going to blame the pro-life community as well, because the pro-abortion community, Molly, they don't care any reason. They're not out here trying to find a reason.
They don't care if you're forced to it.
Exactly right. It's the pro-life community that has caved to this and has allowed this. And what they're saying every time they put that rape exception in their silly laws is that women who were raped should get an abortion. Women who are raped, that's the answer. And it's not.
That's a good point.
And so many of these women, one woman I was just talking to recently, she went and had the abortion because everybody around her, everything she heard, well, you were raped. So of course,
how can you have a rapist baby? How can you do this?
Yep.
You're not going to love
so
this child.
traumatized. She was so traumatized from the abortion. And now 8 years later, she's married and she cannot conceive a child. And there is a very good chance that baby that she aborted, it will be the only child she biologically ever has. And it's devastating.
Amen.
Yes.
And so I have a subtitle to my book back here. It's called God Brought Purpose from My Pain. And for you, I'm sure nobody knows how you were conceived. You can't look at every person and know, whether they were conceived in rape and incest or not. I lost my train of thought now. But every person has the right to life. And now I can't remember. But the stories are important. And Mary, you're going to have to pick up for me because I lost my train of thought.
Well, I know Pam mentioned as part of her bio that she's been a speaker for many years, and part of that is on the sexual integrity. Pam, can you tell us about some of your speaking engagements and some of the young people you may be encountering in that?
And the information they need to know. Yeah.
Right. 100%. So I've been doing this a long time, like I said, 1995. And as a part of my talk, so here's the way I've always approached it with students, that sex is amazing and God created sex for a reason. It's awesome, but it belongs with a boundary. And when sex happens in the boundary for which God created it, it is awesome. Outside of that boundary, it's horribly destructive. And the reality is that when we have sex outside of marriage, outside of that permanent, monogamous, committed relationship, that there is always going to be a cost. And I tell kids every day, I didn't show up at your school, at your conference, whatever it is, to decide for you what you're going to do about sex, because you can do whatever you want. But what I don't want you to have to say is nobody told me. I didn't understand the cost of the choices I was making.
Mhm.
So the reality is when the consequences physically of sex outside of marriage, one of them obviously is pregnancy. They could encounter an unplanned pregnancy. But what's funny is that's usually their first thing. These teenagers, especially, they're like, oh, I just don't want to get pregnant, right? And the reality is I have a girl come in to my clinic. We do a pregnancy test. It's negative. And she's ready to bolt out my door. And I'm like, wait a minute, have you been tested for syphilis, gonorrhea, herpes, chlamydia, trichomonas, vulvodynia, arthritis, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, HPV, HIV? Have you been tested for that? She's like, me? I live in Minnesota. You know, I don't live in California. Like, what? I don't need to be tested for that. And the reality is these girls didn't fully understand all of the consequences, including STD infections, future infertility, and all of those things. But obviously pregnancy is a core consequence here. And I've always told girls, if you find yourself pregnant and you in an unintended pregnancy, you don't have any good choices. Your good choice was before you had sex. Now all of the choices you've got are going to bring pain. Abortion is horribly painful. Parenting is going to bring its own pain and its own struggle and its own consequences. Adoption is going to bring its own pain and its own, but it's a choice that they have. And what you have to do is make the decision to do the best thing for you and your child. And I have been able to go into public schools. Well, not anymore, not since Obama, but prior to Obama, I've been able to go into thousands of public schools and give this message and tell my own story about my birth mother being my hero because she chose to take all the pain. She was the one who said, I am going to do what's best for my child, no matter the pain that it is going to cost me. And she was able to do that for me. That's selfless love. Abortion is selfish. It's me. I want my life. I want my body, my choice. I mean, it's selfish at its core. Adoption is selfless at its core. It's that mom being willing to take on all the pain in order to do what's best. I think, Molly, when you started to talk, you were saying, you were like, redeeming pain. The reality is for me, the finding out that I was adopted was a good thing. It was all my family. They're like, I thought I was special. I'm like, my name's Pam. I'm adopted. Like I was chosen. You were an accident. So I always felt really good about it. I didn't find out that I was conceived in rape until I was in my late teens and late high school from my social worker. And then I struggled a little bit, but I struggled more theologically. And that's probably the teenager that I was. I mean, I went to Christian school. I've been to Bible college. It's kind of the lens I have seen my life through. But it was like, did God plan me? Was I a mistake? Did God, wake up and go, oh my gosh, look what happened. Now what am I going to do with this? And so just really struggling theologically. But one of the things that's so beautiful is a pastor told me this one day, and I've held on to it, that every one of us is ordained, that I was ordained by God, that God didn't plan the rape. What my biological father did was dirty, stinky, filthy, rotten sin, and my existence does not justify that behavior. But God, in the midst of that pain, ordained that I would be here today. And I think those are the kinds of messages that we need to hear and embrace as adopted children. But think about the redemption for my birth mother. And I pray for her regularly. I hope that I have not been able to meet her on earth, but I pray I get to meet her in heaven. That she so selflessly in a lot of trauma did what was best for me. And so that's just miraculous. And that's really why I felt like I needed to come alongside these women in that crisis and be that voice that would help them also make a choice. And I've said, women deserve every choice available to them that does not involve the death of their child.
Right.
That we want them to have every available choice that doesn't involve the death of their child. And we want to walk alongside them while they make those decisions. But because I've had the ability to give such a strong pro-life message in the middle of a sexual integrity talk, right? Even in the public school, the other thing I really believe has made an impact, and I hope has made an impact, is that I think women, or young women especially, and the guys too, need to hear and see adoption as a positive answer to an unintended pregnancy before they're the one experiencing the crisis. Because when you're in the middle of the crisis, it's like, I can't, oh no, and they're going to run to what's easy. But if in their mind, before it's them, but we're not talking about their baby, we're talking just in theory, if they go, you know what, that is pretty awesome. That's amazing that this mom did this selflessly. Maybe they won't just throw away, just throw away the concept, right? That maybe they would just immediately say, no, I could never do that.
That's awesome. And with nowadays, the adoption scene has changed quite a bit. So can you kind of go over the different ways there are, the different adoption choices they have out there?
Sure. Well, most adoptions, and Mary might even be more involved than me on that end, but most adoptions that we're seeing today are all open adoption. In other words, they get to, the biological parents get to choose the family. They can have a relationship with the family. It's a much different thing from, I'm old, I already told you. So this is my 60 year. So in 1965, open adoption was not a thing. And so all the adoptions were closed and the records were closed. And there was a lot of not knowing.
Yeah. Kind of explain closed a little bit.
Closed means that the mother does not know what the family or any identifying information about where her child goes. And on the adopted child's end, we have nothing but non-identifying information. Sometimes we had medical information, sometimes we didn't. But that's really the reason why I ended up finding out about the rape, because the caseworker that did my adoption also did 6 of the other adoptions of my siblings. And when you adopt a child, the caseworker has to come into your house and make sure everything's going well. And so Miss Arts had come to our house quite a bit. And I remember teasing my mom, especially, like, oh, Miss Arts is coming. I'm going to tell her I don't want the new brother. That's what we're going to tell Miss Arts when she gets here, But we had a relationship. I had a relationship with Miss Arts. And when I was late high school, she ended up retiring. I believe she had cancer, and they knew, and she'd worked all these years, even longer than me, to work with families and adoption. So we had a big picnic. We had a giant picnic, and all the families came with all the children to honor Miss Arts. And I cornered her because my parents were open with what they knew. I knew that my mother was 15 at the time of delivery. I knew that she was 5'3". She was Irish and English, blonde and blue-eyed. Now I'm kind of gray now, but I was darker. And and I'm like, wow, I don't sound anything like her, right? And then on the father's side, all it said was American. There was literally no other information. And so I started to go, why don't I have any information about bio dad? And that's when I kind of confronted Miss Arts, and she told me, and you know what, Molly? She told me that my mother was raped, and then that my mother was in foster care at the time of my birth. Oh, so wow. I'm questioning whether it's certainly an adult, possibly a family member. I don't know that. I just know that in 1965, for a teenager to be in foster care, it was a lot rarer than it is today. And so she was going through a lot, obviously. And I also know this because in 1965, abortion was not legal in the state of Michigan. So I was really saved by the pro-life people of the state of Michigan, because had I been conceived in 1975 instead of 1965, I am pretty sure the state would have dragged my mother to the abortion clinic. I don't think I would have survived.
Yes. Absolutely. Yep. That's what happens. That's a subject we haven't really talked about, but we will bring it up another podcast. Is about, young girls in foster care. If they get pregnant, most of them are going to be taken for an abortion,
100%.
And against their will most of the time.
Yes.
So Pam, so we have the open adoption, which means a birth mother can pick the family that she wants her child to go to. She can meet that family, and she has I think an opportunity to have a relationship with that child during this growing up years, or she can choose not to. Is that correct?
Yes, she can choose closed. I would say many of them aren't, but they certainly can choose the level of openness, and they can certainly choose the level of contact that they're comfortable with,
Mhm.
and that puts them in the driver's seat. I know when I first, way back in probably 20 years ago, when I was working with some birth moms